my self-portrait work Vanish, which I did for Connell's Bay Sculpture Park at Waiheke. It consists of 160 ceramic versions of myself, dressed in my overalls. My work deals quite a lot with transforming the everyday, trivial objects into something more spectacular. We're all used to this New Zealand landscape with white sheep, but we're never really looking at them closely. And I thought it would be quite amazing to actually do sculpture which is a live sculpture. For that project, I dressed 12 live Romney sheep in merino wool collar necks. The last installment of the project was in Wellington, the Wellington City Art Gallery. I extended it into ceramic portrait, for which I did 144 portraits of this same sheep. I was quite interested in the whole idea of how can something like sheep become an art. And it also tied in quite beautifully with my interest in transforming mundane objects and elevating them onto some different kind of level. This is the work called Vanish, and the title kind of refers a little bit to perspective. I mean, in one side, vanish in a sense of figures getting smaller, but on the other side, vanish kind of refers to vanishing point. Basically, the whole idea was that I repeat myself as many times as necessary to disappear, in a sense. All these figures are the same, but then there are kind of subtleties. And even if you look at them, each kind of gaze of the eyes is slightly directed in different direction, or there might be slightly different position of standing, slightly different position of hands, all these kind of subtleties. As you can imagine, I mean, to make 160 figures, it's obviously quite obsessive process. I used about 6 tons of clay. And then, you know, I used, I don't know, most probably about a couple tons of plaster. And even to just fire something like this, you know, it took about 2.5 tons of LPG. There are portraits of myself, but after making 160, you don't necessarily look at each one of them as yourself in a way. Every now and then, when you look at them all together, yeah, it's kind of weird feeling, really. On one side, it looks like I might have an inflated ego, but on the other side, it's actually quite the opposite. You know, the more of me I make, the less of me there is. We're in front of the sculpture called One More Round. It's a sculpture which is showing another direction of my practice, which is making larger construction works in steel and glass. This is the biggest of that series. It's basically truncated icosahedron structure. A truncated icosahedron is made out of 20 hexagons and 12 pentagons, which is the structure of the soccer ball, really, or also the structure of fullerness, which are these carbon atoms, which were named after Buckminster Fuller. I do connect this kind of structure with the idea of everyday, but it's more like showing of the microstructure. I always saw my sculptures as having an interactive component, and for this one I created this sound component which is triggered by viewers actually entering the work. So the whole work becomes your headspace. Wow! The sound component is based around sound of something rapturing. I kind of like the idea of this element of fear. On one side it's kind of beautiful, but on the other side we know that if one of the panels crack, it might fall and cut us, and might be an element of danger. This sound component, in a way, elevates that element of danger. This is my work, Brick Bay Polyhedron. It's the first which I did out of mirror-polished stainless steel. It's built out of many different geometric shapes. The work starts as icosahedron, which grows into icosahedron on one side and then back into tetrahedron, and just shows the principle of how these shapes are really related to each other. When you walk into the work, you get reflected into the work, and then next to that you see the sky movements, you see the natural environment around, and then when you walk around, this constantly changes, and the piece, in a way, kind of becomes alive. Really like that this piece is situated in a semi-natural environment and in a way presents kind of like an alien kind of part to the landscape. But on the other side, because it reflects the landscape and absorbs it, it kind of fits into this landscape really well. But this structure of this piece is connected to the natural landscape in a sense that actually shows the microstructure of the matter which surrounds it. I'm doing an exhibition which will be called Reflective Lullaby. I'm transforming the whole art gallery booth into a forest. I'm making larger scale gnomes with a bit different kind of geometric construction, but they're both made out of mirror polished stainless steel. One of the gnomes which will be part of this show, which is called Large Wise Gnome. He looks like he's made out of mercury. Sometimes I'm actually even calling them Terminator gnome.
He's not happy if he doesn't have clean shoes, you know?
And then we also commissioned a landscape architect, which will actually bring in real trees, grasses, and foliage, so that literally the whole art booth will be transformed into this weird, enchanted forest environment. But we'll see. It's hard to exactly say where my practice will go in the future, but I think it will still be concerned with ideas of every day, transforming them from something mundane into something more spectacular. And it will be something which I can kind of talk about as ridiculous on one side and sublime on another.